The number of children in Syria who've been maimed, killed or recruited to fight in 2016 was the highest on record. This is according to a new Unicef report which assessed the 6-year conflict's impact on Syria's children. It found that at least 652 children were killed last year. That's a 20% increase on the previous year. Children as young as 7 are being forced to fight and act in the front line as prison guards, suicide bombers and executioners. And 850 children were recruited to fight in the conflict in 2016 alone. That's nearly 3 times the number recruited in 2015. Let's get more on this report and speak to Genevieve Boutin, who is the Chief of Humanitarian Affairs for Unicef, joining me live from Amman. Genevieve, many thanks for joining us today. Now, why do you think we've seen this increase in the number of children killed in the last year?
Well, first, allow me to say that this is the number of children killed that we've been able to verify as UNICEF, and undoubtedly the actual number of children who fell victims to this horrible war last year was probably much higher. But the reason why this increase has happened is because we've seen all parties to this conflict using methods of warfare that absolutely do not distinguish between civilians and combatants, attacking schools, attacking hospitals, attacking places of worship, which has obviously a very dire impact for children. Of the children that we documented killed last year, over 220 were actually killed either in school or on their way to school, if you can imagine that.
And are you able to determine who is to blame or who is most to blame for this? Is it the regime? Is it the Russians? Is it Daesh? Or is it the rebels?
To be honest, when we do the attribution, as much as we are able to, of course, verify, what the data shows is that everybody is committing them. There is not one party who's more guilty. Unfortunately, there is not sufficient attention that is paid to using methods of war that protect civilians. And this is really across the board in Syria.
What impact will the loss of all these young lives have on the future of Syria if there is some resolution to this war?
Well, we hope that it's not if, but when, of course. The impact will be tremendous. It's not only the lives lost, it's all those children who live traumatized by what they have seen day in and day out. There are 6 million children today inside Syria almost who rely on humanitarian assistance for their survival, which means that they are witnessing horrors, they're seeing the violence. And this is not mentioning the 2.3 registered Syrian refugees just in the region, many of them in Turkey, Jordan, and Lebanon. All have trauma, deep trauma. They will require assistance. They'll also need catch-up to get back to school if they're going to be helping to rebuild the future of Syria, because at the moment inside Syria, 1.7 million children are not attending school.
What do you think can be done to protect these children?
I think it's quite clear in international humanitarian law that those who conduct hostilities and those who support them have a responsibility to use tactics of warfare and weapons that are able to discriminate and not to hit civilians. What we see in Syria is quite the opposite. We see schools and health centers being targeted quite very specifically. So to start, if we could see parties committing to ending those grave violations, respecting the Geneva Conventions and the rules of warfare, that could already help limit the negative impact on children.
Genevieve, many thanks for your time. Genevieve Boutin, the Chief Humanitarian Affairs for UNICEF.